This is Mission Control Houston. Coming up at the end of the month from January 29th through February 1st, NASA and its partners are going to be running another session of what's called the EarthKAM mission. This is a chance for students around the world to program a camera and a laptop on board the International Space Station to point it down at the Earth and to take pictures of different things around the planet. These students are basically running their own experiment on board the International Space Station. We are fortunate enough now to be joined by one of the teachers who has worked with that experiment. We're joined by Diane Bowen from Brunswick, Maine. Diane, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Josh. How are you?
Oh, it's going well. Now, let's see. First of all, let me ask you this. You were an astrobiology teacher, but that was to eighth graders, correct?
Correct.
I don't remember taking astrobiology whenever I was in junior high. So, talk a little bit about how you started that, because I know that you pitched that program to the powers that be there in Brunswick, Maine, and sort of started a pilot program, correct?
Yes, actually, it was partially NASA, Maine Space Grant Consortium, and Lockheed Martin that funded the pilot program, and I was lucky enough to be one of the 10 in the state of Maine.
So, how did you get involved with EarthKAM? This experiment goes back to, I think, the mid 90s, 1995, and it was started by Sally Ride,
Right. Correct.
obviously the first American female in space and somebody that had a long history with NASA. So, how did you find out about it and how did you get involved?
Well, I was actually asked to start the program by Bob Gabries of Goddard Space Flight Center, and I had previously done a project called Moonlink, and he said, I'd love for you to try it. So started it in 1996 and full force in 1997. And it's a fantastic program.
So, I'm assuming you did both the space shuttle version of this and also the space station version, correct?
Correct.
So, you taught for what, 30 years? You just retired here recently, correct?
I did.
So, are you missing teaching yet?
Well, I'm kind of keeping my hand in it. I'm doing EarthCam, obviously. I did MoonCam as well. And we're working right now on a grant with astrobiology and scientific ballooning.
Sure. So, talk a bit about, whenever you're sitting there with your students and you're teaching them, how did you guys pick targets, and what was the process for that with your students?
Oh, gosh. We sent out forms to teachers and community members and for latitude, longitude. Of course, we can't always get it, but when we do, it's phenomenal. But for the most part, it's we concentrate. Having lived in California on the San Andreas Fault, we've also looked at the results of faulting,
Yeah.
earthquakes, deforestation. We got one of the Palm Islands one time, and we also got a picture of New Orleans right after Katrina, which was very sad. But you could see the breaks in the levee and
Yeah,
everything.
it's got to be a way I would assume to sort of teach your kids about real world impacts of Earth and how both natural and man made phenomena affect our planet, especially seeing it from 250 miles up in space, right?
Exactly. It's just a phenomenal program. It includes everything, not only STEM, but also geography, communications, working on a team, etc.
As a teacher, how important is it for you to have something like this where you can actually, it's more than just a textbook. It's something you can actually show your students it's real, that they're actually controlling something on board, this huge orbiting laboratory and actually doing real science.
That's my motto: is make it real. Otherwise kids sit in a classroom and say, "Why do I need this stuff? Why do I have to learn this?" And the students in EarthCam don't ask those questions because they work in real time with astronauts and other scientists, which is very cool.
And what would you tell other teachers? Because I think whenever teachers think, "Oh my gosh, I could actually, control or get my students to control an experiment on board the space station," that's got to be sort of a hard process to go through. It's got to be difficult. What would you tell them? Because it's really fairly easy, right?
It is, and number one, it's free. Number two, that there's great support. And also, it's one of those things that, I mean, I had a group a long time ago that actually spent the night in our library, and you'd hear them be kids for a while, and then all of a sudden they'd disappear, and you go into the computer lab, and there were all the students sitting there silently with just the light of the computer. Amazing, amazing. Also teaches you that things can go wrong.
Yeah.
We had an instance where we had people from all over the country that came to spend the night, and we got the word that the astronauts had gone to sleep. And I said, well, what do we do? And the kids, of course, begged us to stay in the cafeteria and the library. And we said, well, the only deal is you have to go on your sleep cycle. And they did, and we had to wake them up the next morning when the teachers were coming into the school.
Well, I think we all learn to deal with unplanned events whenever it comes to spaceflight,
Yes, we do.
So, whenever you got it, you were involved in this for quite a long time. What images that you took with your students stand out the most? Which ones do you remember? I know you mentioned New Orleans and the San Andreas Faults and things like that. Are there any others that come to mind?
Oh, there are lots. I actually go to Johnson Space Center to present at the Space Exploration Educators Conference. And I'm taking my EarthKAM photos with me, and I've run into people from all over the world that say, oh my gosh, that's my town. And I love handing those out to teachers. But I've, that one, when we did the tsunami, got a photo of the Indonesian one.
Right.
We've gotten cities. We've gotten San Francisco and the San Andreas Fault. That one was awesome. Out of the thousands, it's just amazing.
So
I would say the Katrina one was probably the most unbelievably awesome but sad.
Yeah. So whenever you encourage other teachers to participate, you would say that this is appropriate for both middle school, high school, whoever wants to participate, right?
Yes, all the way from elementary actually to high school, and I've had students even follow it through college as well, which is kind of cool.
It's a powerful thing to see images of where you live from up in space. It's an unusual vantage point for people to see that, and I think I think it makes it more powerful whenever the students are controlling this experiment themselves.
Right, and for the kids to see what a fragile planet we're dealing with, and that we live on, and that we've got to take care of.
Yeah. Well, there's 2 information sessions for teachers that can participate. The first one's going to be on January 22nd at 9:30 a.m. Central Time. The second one is the next day, January 23rd. At 6 p.m. Central Time, and all teachers have to do is send an email to that web address you're seeing there on the screen, and that is webinar@earthkam.ucsd.edu. So again, it's webinar@earthkam.ucsd.edu, and again, the actual EarthKAM session is going to take place January 29th through February 1st. So Diane, it's been an honor to talk to you, especially after teaching for 30 years, which is just an amazing accomplishment. But congratulations to you, and again, we want to thank you for joining us today here on NASA Television.
Well, I thank NASA for such a wonderful program to inspire kids.
Thanks again, Diane.
Okay, take care.